Welcome to episode 19 of the At Bat Baseball podcast presented by War Media, where we give you our thoughts on the latest Chicago baseball news, as well as take a trip around the league. I am Saul Rodriguez, along with Miles Porter. How are we doing today, man?
Doing good, doing good. Yeah, we got playoffs coming up. Won a good game this weekend, came back and walked it off. So that feels good. And we're going to the playoffs feeling confident. I have to miss the first game because I have a very close a friend of mine's wedding, which I'm very excited to go to. So, I'm hoping that we were able to pull it out the day I'm out there, and I'll be good to go the next day.
Yeah, and how did your weekend go, like stats wise? Like, did you get any big hits or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, nice little, definitely better than the weekend before. Good Lord. But nice little 2 for 5, and in that last inning, when we were down by 2, I was able to, get that leadoff hit. That's kind of started the rally for us to come back and beat a team that's won 7 games in a row. So that feels good. A lot of confidence right now for all the boys. So want to try to finish this season as strong as we possibly can.
And when's the All-Star game? Or did the All-Star game happen already?
So the All-Star game was actually rained out.
Ooh,
it was
okay.
rained out. So, the league is saying that they're going to try to make it up. I think that's going to be kind of hard with, a lot of players going back to the schools or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
I think that might be kind of hard, but, I know I'm an all-star. I know everyone else who was picked to be on this team. Everyone's an all-star, even though the game didn't happen. It's okay. It's okay.
That's true. That is true. As you know, I spent my week, we were talking about it, spent my weekend in Miami. As you can tell, if you can tell by my voice a little bit, it's a little, it's a lot of yelling and a lot of laughing caused this. So it's it's from a good time, but it is what it is. Try to push through because it's a big episode today, man. So we got a lot to talk about with the Cubs and the White Sox, what the trade deadline went down, and a lot of stuff that broke, especially literally just minutes before this podcast started recording with Tim Anderson, Chris Sale type stuff like around the league. And of course, with one of our biggest, if not the biggest guests we've had on this podcast, and that's MLB Network's Robert Flores. Now I'm super excited for that. I mean, cannot wait. Cannot believe I was able to get that. But it, I always say with how young our podcast is, getting any type of guest is a big deal. But a guest like him, I mean, it's pretty cool. So that'll come later in the show. We'll start off with the White Sox, who are 53 and 52. They beat the Royals in a series 2-3. Then they ended up splitting 4 with the Rangers. They had another positive week. They go 4-3. They only gain a game in the standings. Still, they're sitting at 2 games behind the Twins in the Central. In the wild card, they are 3 games behind that third spot. It's the Mariners. Right now, it's Blue Jays, Rays, and Mariners. But yeah, to go over like the series and what happened, you look at or just in general, you look at before I go into that, is just look at the way the division has been over the last few weeks, or even just the second half of the season. And I look at like the schedules for Minnesota, Cleveland, and the White Sox, and their schedules all look the same, like win-loss, or win-win, loss. It's super inconsistent, and I feel like that's probably how it's going to go down for the rest of this of the season. And obviously, like I said, we'll talk about Tim Anderson's injury that might affect the race. But yeah, we'll start off with that series in Kansas City, or against Kansas City, where Giolito gives up 2 runs in a 9-2 win. Then Lance Lynn takes down KC, and Jose Abreu homers in the 4-1 win. They were able to win, like I said, 2 games out of 3 in a series they should easily have. Then they played the Rangers. Now this was, a series I was saying over the weekend. I'm like, there's another series the Sox have to have again. Like, it's another beatable team. Got to do it. And once again, it was just 2022 White Sox baseball, and not being able to capitalize on a favorable series and win that series. They ended up tying 2-2. Cueto, in game 1, The Sox lost against the Rangers 3-2. The former first rounder debuted for the Rangers, Cole Reagans. He went 5 strong innings. Then in game 2, Johnny Cueto once again doing everything Johnny Cueto can to get the Sox a win. 3 earned runs. And you just can't say enough about this guy. I mean, he's got 2.91 ERA, a guy that had a minor league deal with the Sox, and now he's going off. And then Dylan Cease, once again, Dylan Cease things literally unstoppable. He goes off and he might even go on in a Cy Young run. He goes 1 run in 6 innings. He did walk 3, as I've always said. It's like his Achilles heel is the walk, but as long as he can keep it lower or get better on that, he'll be fine. Eloy hit an eventual game-winning home run in that game. And then in the third meeting, Dane Dunning had his revenge game, I guess you can say, as he went 7 shutout innings against the Sox in the 8-0 Rangers win. And then in the finale, Giolito gives up 1 run in 5 innings. Sox crushed Rangers pitching. They had 15 hits, 8 runs to earn a series split. So a silver lining there. At least they got to do that in the last game. Andrew Vaughn hit his 14th home run. After a rough July, he's 11 for 26 in August. He's slugging 654. So great to see that. The one thing we'll start off with Giolito, like he's starting to look a little more like himself the last few starts. It has been a rough go overall. He's still walking guys in general. I mean, it's been the Sox thing really in general. I said it was Dylan Cease's Achilles heel, but really it might just be the whole Sox pitching staff, because they have the 5th highest walk rate in the league. And that, just shows in guys like Giolito and Cease that they're struggling to find the strike zone sometimes against these guys. But yeah, you take every small victory you can with Lucas Giolito. What's sort of the things that you've been seeing with him? And just with the Sox rotation overall, when it comes to that, with the walks and all that stuff, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think that there is a somewhat of a factor that they are trying to balance out attacking hitters and being careful in which they do attack hitters, because as we see, there are starts from every single person in this rotation. There are starts that I look at and I'm like, absolutely, I love the way you're attacking these hitters. Now we're not afraid to go at guys. Now when sometimes you can visibly see it, and specifically sometimes I see with Giolito there can be discomfort, and not always from a physical aspect, but the way he is kind of dancing around hitters. I think that is one of the things that he can be better at. And I think really a lot of this rotation in general, I think I like when these guys attack. I really do. I don't like when they're dancing around hitters. I think that this rotation is, aside obviously from Dylan Cease and Johnny Cueto, I feel like there's been a lot of underachieving going on. I respect when they are attacking hitters more. Obviously they don't want to give up the long ball or give up any extra base hits, so they're kind of pitching around guys. But I think go at hitters like you guys have been doing in many cases, especially when I look back on last year. I'm really hoping for I'm not going to say a different mindset, but if there's one thing that the Sox can improve on, is that, because offensively, I think they've been a very dominant team, especially over the past week, especially since the All-Star break. I think for the White Sox, this is who they are pretty much. And I said it back in the beginning of July. There's a time to turn it around. It was then. But here we are. So I think if there's one thing that the Sox can improve on, and maybe kind of build some momentum going into September, and the playoffs aren't looking all that great, that's something to go into next year feeling good about, is the offense, and kind of change the philosophy. I'd be telling my guys, hey, go right at it. So that's what I think on that.
Yeah, it's a lot of as much as there's been negatives, you can take the positives, whether it's the next year or whatever.
Yeah.
But for them, I think it's like they got it right there in front of them. They just got to execute. But that's been obviously the problem for them all year, right? It's that they know what they got to do. The goal is right there in front of them, but they haven't been able to, close it and get the job done. So,
Yeah.
one guy who has been able to get the job done lately has been Eloy Jimenez. I mean, the dude is absolutely raking. He's one of a couple of Sox raking. He has a 1477 OPS his last 15 games. And what kind of makes me wonder is where would they be? Where would they be if they had Eloy the whole season, and not have not have him, injured for most of the season? That would have been, I think, big because he's playing like Eloy Jimenez should be playing right
Mhm.
now.
Yeah.
Gap to gap, hitting bombs, being clutch. So, and then also not only that, but Jose Abreu is also killing it, and just having him out there and Eloy, just carrying the offense, just shows that the Sox could easily win that division if they execute everything right. And they just have the pieces to do it. I think that's one of the reasons why, and we'll get into it obviously.
Yeah.
They stayed pat at the trade deadline. And
Yeah.
then whether
Yeah.
it's a good decision or not, we'll get into that. But for them, that's probably why they did it. And of course, now as I did mention a little bit about Tim Anderson's injury, Tim Anderson is now out 4 to 6 weeks with a torn ligament in his hand. So that is, I mean, colossal. Like, it's a huge loss for the Sox. Obviously, their captain on the field. That guy, gets it done day in and day out on the offensive end. Goes hard on every play. I mean, this guy is the heart and soul of the White Sox. And to lose him for 4 to 6 weeks in a pennant chase like this, in such a tight race like this, I don't necessarily know what the Sox are gonna have to pull out of their pocket to fill in for there. I mean, I think it kind of capitalizes more this performance by Eloy and by Jose, because what they're doing now is what they're gonna have to do for the rest of the season, because it's a huge loss with Anderson. What are your thoughts on the loss of the All-Star shortstop, man?
Yeah. That's terrible. That's terrible for a team that is trying to put it together to some capacity, and that's a huge loss for them. And you just hope that that this is the minimum amount that he's going to be out. You hope that 4 weeks is the minimum that he's going to be out. Because what Tim Anderson is one of my favorite players, and he's not just good for like the White Sox. It's amazing how much he's good for just the game of baseball in general. Um, and specifically, the city of Chicago, what he does for the city of Chicago is the way he inspires so many young players who look like him or look up to him. You know, you cannot say enough about him. So this is one of those things where it's unfortunate, but I do look at they still have a very very powerful lineup, and Jose Abreu and Vaughn up there, and Luis Robert as well, who's hitting well. They have a lot of pieces still to succeed offensively, but this is you're losing a 300 hitter. That regardless of how many other 300 hitters you have, or 290, 280 hitters you have in your lineup, you know, one less is gonna make a difference. It is, especially when you have a leader like that on the field. So, wishing him a speedy recovery. And this is terrible. It's terrible. White Sox season already has been, you know, not the greatest, and this is just another piece where it's like, oh man, this is they can't catch a break. So I'm fingers crossed that he comes back sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, it is true. You make a great point there, and that it's just not just a loss for the Sox, but a loss for baseball in general.
Yeah,
And it really is. I mean, this is one of those guys that the face of the bat flip movement, and guys just showing your emotion and just doing your thing, and not having to worry about
yeah,
the old heads and type thing. It's like
yeah,
it really is you know a terrible loss, and they will you know I think have a lot of guys step up, just like Eloy and Abreu, but will it be
yeah.
enough is the question.
Right. Yeah,
Um, and I think that if it really, I think a lot of the problems this year have, as you mentioned before, have stemmed from the pitching. So I think
yeah,
if the pitching can, do its thing, if everyone can follow Cueto and Dylan Cease, and Giolito can do his thing, and Lance Lynn can do his thing, then everything will work out. And
Yeah.
the obviously one of the things that's has stood out in the last week is that they stayed pat in the trade deadline, and they really just got Diekman from the Red Sox, the lefty reliever, and everyone was a little bit distraught, I guess you could say, because
Yeah.
I mean
Yeah.
they really expected something um, from them, and as I said before, I think they're just their thing is just banking on their talent. They're banking on the guys they got, and I
Yeah.
think that now that Tim Anderson's hurt, that really kind of backfires now, and it kind of like, man, like you should have gotten at least one bat or something.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the way for me, I did it didn't make any sense why they stayed pat for me, just because like I think that all they needed was like a bat or they got the bullpen piece. They needed at least something in there. But they needed a bat, and they could have gone out like a lot of people said, oh, Ian Happ's a perfect fit for them, or Benintendi obviously went to the Yankees, but they had plenty of options, even some cheaper options that they didn't have to give up too much.
Yeah.
And they just didn't do anything. Obviously, the rumors were that they went for Otani, but obviously it came out a couple days ago that like the Angels were not ever serious about dealing Otani, at least in this
Right.
deadline.
Yeah.
So take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the Sox staying put for this trade deadline?
Yeah, I think I think it is a little bit disappointing. I think that maybe they could have added another bat. I think adding another supportive arm in terms of the rotation or the bullpen in general would have been great for them. I do understand this, and at the same time, I understand why they stayed put, because when you look at this team on paper, um, they should be very dominant at every single time. From you look at the year that Lance Lynn had last year, then you look at Dylan Cease, the year that he's having, and then Giolito as well, and then Cueto doing his job, and then you know Liam Hendricks being the closer that he's been, along with a few other arms in that bullpen. You can understand a little bit why they would stay put, but then you got to look at the performances of this year alone. Um, so I think they didn't do themselves a justice of not adding someone. I think they should have added something. They should have done something. It was legit kind of nothing. Not saying nothing to Diekman coming over. That's not what I'm saying. But in terms of just making a few more impactful move, I think that would have been great for the White Sox, for a team that has been 500 the entire year. They have not found any consistency, so maybe a little extra oomph would have been the difference maker. But I don't know.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what you heard about from Sox fans is just like they just needed something, man. Like it's not even
Yeah,
they're not asking for too much, but they wanted something to kind of give them a boost this season,
yeah,
kind of give their offense a little bit of a bump. But yeah, I guess we'll see. It literally is like a see what happens type situation with the Sox and see if those guys can continue hitting and see if that translates to wins. They obviously have the rest of the week with another favorable schedule where they face the Royals for four, three, and then three against Detroit. They actually have a
yeah,
doubleheader against the Royals. We're recording this on a Tuesday, and then they play three against Detroit. So it's 7 games, 7 winnable games, and hopefully the Sox are able to, you know, take advantage and see where that Tim Anderson injury goes. Hopefully, that's just an estimation. He'll be back sooner rather than later.
yeah. Fingers crossed.
We'll move now to the Cubs, who are 43-63. They were swept in St. Louis 3-0, and then they got a win versus the Miami Marlins, 2 games out of 3. That series against St. Louis, it was one of those things where it's like, it would be nice to play spoiler, and be able to take down the Cardinals. And they've played well against the Cardinals, the Brewers. We said that before. But it just didn't show up this series whatsoever. I mean, the Cardinals were able to take care of the Cubs easily. They're 6-0 in the opener. And then on Thursday they had a doubleheader. The Cardinals won 4-3, and then 7-2 in the third game. Yeah, I mean, in that Cardinals series, I mean, look, the Cardinals starting to play better baseball. They're starting to look like they are the real deal for the NL Central. Obviously, at the trade deadline, that Josh Hader deal was huge, and Josh Hader went from Milwaukee to San Diego. A lot of people were puzzled about that. And I think it's going to make a big impact on the Central. Not to say that the Brewers don't have a shot, but I think that the way that the Cardinals went out there and got Jose Quintana, went out and got Jordan Montgomery, uh, they they really, filled in those spots in their roster, and they're primed for an NL Central run. This is their time now. I mean, they're on a 7-game winning streak. They swept the Cubs, they swept the Yankees. So it's starting to be this race in the NL Central. I think, and it's funny because we talked about this before. We're like, hey, these guys make some moves, they're gonna leave one of those teams behind, and it looks like the Cardinals might leave the Brewers behind. And we'll get into that in a sec. But the next series the Cubs played was against the Marlins. Cubs hosted the Marlins. In the first game, Contreras, he of course made his first appearance at home since not being dealt. He had a 2-run home run in the 8th inning as the Cubs beat the Marlins 2-1. And then in the second game, the Cubs won 4-0. Drew Smiley had another great start. He went 6 2/3, struck out 4, and gave up no runs. The Cubs beat Pablo Lopez, so that was a good win there. And then in the finale, Cubs were just not able to solve Jesus Luzardo. I mean, he's just one of the young talents that the Marlins have in that rotation. And he did his job. Adrian Sampson had another solid start for him. Unfortunately, on the losing end of things, and the Cubs, of course, win that series 2-1. Yeah, but from the past week, and we'll get into the trade deadline stuff of what the Cubs did, or in the bigger news, what they didn't do. But how do you feel about the weekend, and how do you think that the Cubs played against the Cardinals and the Marlins?
You know, those are two series that went kind of the way you expect them. You expect the Cardinals to give you a bit of a hard time, but against the Marlins, you probably can compete a little bit better. Not too surprised. Not too surprised about what I saw there. I loved this team is always showing fight. Even when they're getting their butts kicked, they still go out there and do their job to the best of their ability. So when I look at the Marlins series, that series that's still very promising. I'll take 2 games from anytime. Jesus Luzardo is extremely nasty, extremely good stuff. And he's a very talented pitcher, and I think he's actually better. I think he's still developing as a pitcher. So just lots of good things to take away. I think specifically for when the Marlins were in town. So I love that Wilson isn't gone. I love that Ian Happ isn't gone. Wilson has had a lot of impact. He's had a lot of impact, since the trade deadline. So I think that is one of those things that you look at is something to feel good about. Now, what happens in the offseason, we don't know. But for now, we're able to enjoy these moments with Wilson, with Ian. We also know that Jason Hayward's no longer going to be a part of the club anymore. I think for any Cubs fan, it's just enjoy moments right now as much as you possibly can. This isn't a season that's gonna be talked about in years from now, but we can just appreciate the game for what it is when it comes to the Cubs. So any sort of little victory, any sort of little things, players' relationship with the fans, or Worrell hitting a home run, or whatever the case may be, or Wilson ended the game with a strike him out, throw him out to Nico Horner. Enjoy these moments. These are still good things to smile about. And that's really how I look at these last 2 series, is this, there's always great things to take away from. This team is going to have ugly moments, but there's still so much great that has come out of the season. And there's a lot also to address in the offseason. And I think these 2 series are kind of what the Cubs have been the past few years.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely what I try to do. Like, watching these games, watching this season is just enjoy the small victories you can get in this a bad season like this. And and I feel like every winning series has something positive, and it's like Wilson and Hap are back, and enjoying their time with the Cubs, and I'll use it as a transition just to kind of you know get into what happened in the trade deadline, what I think happened at the trade deadline, how I feel about it. Yeah, so I mean, they ended up obviously not trading Contreras and Hap, and they, they ended up, dealing plenty of other guys, like F. Ross, Chris Martin, but the big fish stayed, and I think, they said that they just couldn't find the right package for them, and I think that, I mean, I believe that I believe they couldn't find the right package. And I think that what factored into that is Juan Soto going to the Padres. I think that's probably
Yeah.
what factored in the most, is because, the Padres wanted him. They wanted Contreras, they wanted Hap, they wanted a package of those two guys. But I think they saw an opportunity to get Soto. And they went for it. Same with the Dodgers. Um, they were interested in Ian Happ. They were more interested in Soto. The Mets. I don't know necessarily how close they were in particular to getting Soto. Because like I said before, I don't know if the Nationals would do that. Trade to their division rival. But they also were interested in Contreras, and just ended up not working out. Is it a positive? I think that for 2022 it is. I think that for 2022 it gives us a little bit of hope in that maybe they'll be able to extend at least one of them. Um, I don't think both will be extended as much as I hope that would happen. I don't
Mhm.
think it's going to happen. Um, but I do think what it will happen is that they'll try to extend Wilson Contreras. They'll try to give him the qualifying offer. He won't take it. He'll sign somewhere else, and then we'll get a compensation pick. That's probably what's going to happen. I just think he knows his worth. I know he's gonna get paid.
Yeah.
Even if it's not by us. And then I think even if it's not this year, because Ian Happ will still be with us next year. I still think the Cubs will extend Happ, maybe even next year. I don't even think like it doesn't matter if has an all-star season next year. I think he's such an important part of this team because of how versatile he is, the positions he plays,
Yeah.
kind of the type of role he plays on the team. As much as Wilson is, that guy because he's a vet, he's been doing, been an all-star, done all that. It's just I think I think at the end of the day he's going to take that big contract, deservedly so. Absolutely, fine with that. I think as much as I want the Cubs to pay him, I just don't think it's going to happen. And yeah, but it was really weird because of the fact that like we had said goodbye to these guys basically already. And to have them back was
Yeah.
a little funny, but it kind of all's well and ends well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of, it shows the relationship between the players and the fans. And I think it was actually kind of cool because, we went through this last year. So I think, there's that those emotions right there, and just yeah, I think it would have been another tough adjustment for fans to see another beloved World Series member on another squad. Um, and I know it's very unlikely that we will see both of them. And like you said, I think at least one of them, specifically Ian Happ, is going to stick around. Um, I think one of my biggest issues with this ball club is that we have so many we've had so many great prize possessions and players and what they do for an organization. Um, Sometimes even beyond the stats. I, I guess one of my issues with it is that I still think that there are certain Cubs right now, former Cubs, that should still be Cubs. And even with a season like this, even if we had some of these guys around, specifically I'm hinting at Anthony Rizzo, I think we would still be able to get a lot in return. I I know there's a lot of metrics that go into getting rid of certain talent when you're having a bad season and when you're rebuilding. I know that there is a lot that goes into that, but I think one of the faults of the Cubs is that although we know that this is a business, there is still a lot of value in these guys who have stuck around. Look at the Cardinals. How long Yachty and Wainwright have been around for a very long time. Look at the Reds. Joey Votto, he's still there. He's still there producing and being a leadership, and even he's having a down year. But I think that organization, someone knows his leadership and his experience next to his talent, it is something that there are no numbers that anyone can give me that is like, it's worth getting rid of a player like that. And so I think that's one thing that, is kind of frustrating for me, is because we do have these kind of players that can have that kind of impact. But to just constantly get rid of, what used to be our core, and get back prospects, which I think is very important. We're not even taking care of the prospects very well. And I've said it on the show. I've talked about it with friends. You look at how a few of the minor league guys are doing now, aside from Pete Crow Armstrong and one or two other players. Guys are injured. Guys are not playing very well. If we're gonna send players out, you know what I mean. If we're gonna put away the morals and just look at the business aspect, do it right. And that's where my issue with all this comes in, because I think what Ian and Wilson bring to this Chicago Cubs team is beyond any stats or any metrics that you can really, put out there.
Yeah, and it does. Yeah, I mean, it's just it's funny because I kind of think about it sometimes too, and I'm just like, this is something that maybe like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, nobody would even consider talking about. Like, it's just like, if your team is a good player, you keep the player. End of story, right? It's like, no matter where you're at, you just keep the player, trying to sell tickets, whatever it is. We live in such a different time. Like, it's just about, it's what have you done for me lately? It's the numbers game, and which I don't mind at all. But the thing is, like, it does it my brain says, okay, I can see, where that makes sense. But, the
Yeah.
emotional part of it is like, no, it doesn't make any sense. Right. So it's like,
Right.
it's a very confusing time.
Yeah.
But all I'm doing at the end of the day is just crossing my fingers and hoping they do the right move. Cause I think at the end of the day, Jed Hoyer is a great, general manager, great baseball operations
Yeah.
guy. So I think, I think it'll be fine. And I think with these moves, these next couple moves we're talking about,
Yeah.
that I wanted to talk about, with Franmil Reyes, that I think that was a good move. The Cubs signed
Yeah.
him, or the Cubs claimed him off waivers. It's a good move. I mean, he's basically just had one bad season. He's had a solid career this whole time, and maybe he can run into some balls and hit some bombs for us, and we'll see him next year again too. So
Yeah.
it would be cheap. But the one thing, obviously, that you mentioned before, and that's the big deal, is that Jason Hayward will not be part of the Cubs next year.
Yeah.
He will be kept on the team as inactive for the rest of this season. So we basically have seen the last game of Jason Hayward on the Cubs. It is, no disrespect to Hayward whatsoever, but this is a positive, right? It's like, I think we're moving on from the Hayward era. Unfortunately, it just never worked out with the numbers. Obviously, he was, as a great person, they loved him there. They loved him, his presence in the clubhouse. People said that's one of the main reasons he hadn't been released already, right? Because they wanted him in the clubhouse to mold the young players, to help the young players. So he had an impact. You can't say he didn't have anything at all, but just from the numbers perspective, I mean, it was just rough go. I mean, 700 OPS over 7 seasons, and a below 100 OPS plus. I think it was 85 for the 7 seasons. So, I think what this move says, though, is that the Cubs are ready to move on and ready to do something, whether it be into next year, whether it be into 2024. They're going to have some money off the books. They're going to, it's not going to affect the luxury tax. Obviously, they will have to pay out Hayward, but it won't affect the luxury tax. But I think these are the types of moves that, give me hope that we're moving in the right direction sooner than we all expect. What were your thoughts overall on both those moves, but really mainly on the Hayward one?
Yeah, and by the way, happy birthday, Jason Hayward, today.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Jeez.
Oh man.
Oh my gosh. Ah, God, it's painful to say. Yeah, I think so so I understand it when it comes to that move. I do. Offensively, there's been a lot of struggles. There's been a lot of ups and downs. But there are a few seasons that I looked at from Hayward, and I wasn't as disappointed as a lot of people were, specifically when I look at his 2017 to 2019 numbers. Not all that disappointed with like an overall 260 batting average. OPS, but the strikeouts are kind of high as well. But drew a lot of walks. Defensively, he's always been great. I think this move does make sense. This is one of those moves that did not work out as much as we thought it would or hoped it would from an offensive standpoint, but from a leadership standpoint, Jay Hayes, he's a hidden gem. And also kind of like what I said about Tim Anderson, but Jason Hayward has done a lot for the city of Chicago, building facilities for, in areas for underprivileged children to having somewhere to go, to whatever, community center. It is just, it's incredible what he's done for the city of Chicago, who he is as a person, goes way beyond any numbers. And from like a business standpoint, and from, stats and everything, I understand it. I do understand this move right here. So I guess as a fan, I would just say thank you to Jason Hayward, because I'll say for me as a player, he inspired me to speak my mind and just be a leader in a sense, and stand up for what's right, and what it means to lead young people and people that look up to you. So it's tough. I understand it from a business and player standpoint, but I hope he finds another team and finds success there. If not, stick around in Chicago and keep doing great things for the city.
Yeah, it's like what you hear from a lot of the people too around the team is he never stopped trying to earn that deal. Like he worked every day. It's like people are like, man, is this guy not trying? Like you just hear the chatter on Twitter, and it's like, this guy's not trying. Well, what is he doing? No, like they made it clear, like he worked hard every day to earn that. You don't think he was sitting there sometimes probably like, man, I got this deal and these numbers are just not showing up. What am I doing? Obviously, right? It's just like, it's a human thing. Obviously, he's gonna sit there and think these things, but what he did was work hard, get through it, and he and the thing is too is that he's not like his career is not over. I think he's still gonna make an impact on another team, whether it be like as off the bench or defensive replacement or whatever, starting, whatever it is. He has still a lot of value left on him as a complimentary piece on a winning team. So if he can go somewhere and the experience he has is unreal, from his whole career, from winning World Series to being one of the best rookies back in the day. He'll definitely make that impact wherever he goes. And we wish him nothing but the best, because he definitely from a lot of aspects made a positive impact in the city of Chicago. So definitely wish him well. The Cubs also, they have 2 more games against the Nationals. They played last night and won. Christopher Morel with a big home run, Nelson Velasquez as well. And they have 2 more against the Nats, and then 3 at Cincinnati, one being the Field of Dreams game. So the Field of Dreams game is on Thursday, and the jerseys came out. I don't know, I wanted to get your thoughts on those, just like what with the looks that they went for that game.
Yeah, I think those jerseys are cool. I've always seen those classical styles. Specifically, I'm very familiar with the ones that the Cubs are wearing. I like the hat a lot. I think I like it. For both sides. So, it makes sense. It's a very classical style game, obviously from the movie and the impact that it had. I think it's pretty awesome that the Cubs, like, they're getting like these specific event games, regardless of how much that they've been struggling. Like, next year they'll be in London playing. I will be there. I will be at that game. I am going. There is no question about that. I love London. I love the UK so much. I've been there. I've been there literally twice, but it's amazing. I have friends there, and it's incredible. So yeah, I like it. I like this. Kind of like a spotlight game. These are two teams that are virtually the same. So this could be a very competitive game because these are two teams that are very very similar. So I like the jerseys. I like the matchup. It really isn't lopsided, so it can be entertaining.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's that also London series is gonna be sick. I mean, playing the Cardinals in London, and that'll be a spectacle. Just as we've seen, like when the Red Sox and Yankees played there,
Yeah.
people showed up, so it'd be pretty dope. We need that vlog right there, Miles. Like at bat vlog takes London type
Oh
stuff right
yeah,
there.
yeah, 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 yeah. I'm gonna hook us up with that. Don't worry. Got you.
But yeah, no, this Field of Dreams game, it's nice for the Cubs to, it's obviously, everyone's like, oh man, these are two, bad teams. Like, why are you putting them in? But hey, you know what? If they're not playing in October, at least they have something to cheer for, something positive to play these games and enjoy. I mean, we saw what happened last year with the Yankees and White Sox. It was a great game.
Yeah,
So hopefully the Cubs and the Reds could also, put some balls into the into the
yeah, yeah.
cornfields.
Exactly.
So, all right. So we'll move on from there. Like I said, the Cubs are 44-64. And they will play 2 against the Nets and then 3 against the Reds. We'll finish off with around the league and a couple of notes there. The Mets just proved why they are the team to beat in the NL East with a 4 out of 5 game series win. DeGrom came back home and Kate a dozen Braves. Look, I didn't pick the Mets to win the division. Said the Braves were going to win. And this series, I said was going to be pivotal. It was going to be really important to how this plays out. And the Braves had a huge opportunity to really put a stamp on their season to give themselves a shot to win the division. And this really put a big blow in them. Like this, the fact that, we're less than 2 months away from the postseason. And they're 7 games back. The Mets with no signs of slowing down. What do you think this means? And do you think do you think that the Mets have it wrapped up in the NL East?
I think it's looking pretty good for the Mets right now. You take care of a very big opponent in your division. You pretty much manhandle them throughout the entire series. Yeah. I think it's looking good for them. You got DeGrom back, Scherzer's pitching great, and everything offensively. I don't even know where to start with this team offensively. It's been a party. It's been a party in New York. Very proud of the Mets. And like I said this from the beginning. Just keep that other stuff just away because this team has always been built so great at the beginning of each year. I don't see why they haven't been doing this for a few seasons now. So I'm loving it. I've always rooted for the Mets. I love seeing them get this success. I love the impact that Vogelbach has had on this team, hitting 333 with 13 hits and 39 at bat. Like, come on, man! Are you kidding me? So I just want to see them, continue to play with confidence, having fun. Starling Marte, he's been incredible. Brandon Nimmo, like I can go on, and even though Francisco Lindor isn't having like an all-star year, he's having a very much improved year. So I'm loving it. I'm loving everything the Mets are doing right now. They're clicking on all cylinders, and I think they pretty much have this in the bag. But you still got the rest of August, and you still got September, and anything can happen. But I think with DeGrom back, they'll be all right.
Yeah, I mean that's a giant, deal. Them getting DeGrom back and
Yeah.
having Scherzer now. I mean that's, but yeah. So it's gonna be interesting the way this NL East race, ends up looking at by the end of September. Another thing I wanted to talk about before we go is the news that just broke, and no pun intended there, a few hours ago. Chris Sale fractured his wrist after falling off a bike. I mean, that just You can't make this stuff up. Chris Sale has had these freak injuries just at time after time, and the Red Sox aren't looking like they're not going anywhere postseason or anything. If they did, it'd be a wild card spot, and I don't think that's going to happen with how stacked the AL is. I mean, they're 4.5 games back, possibility still there, but they have a lot of kinks in their armor. I don't think that's going to happen. This one, putting Chris Sale out for the season, with the fractured wrist is just enormous. What are your thoughts on that? And I'm sure you have a good amount of thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's Chris Sale. It feels like he's just been nothing but injured for the past however long it's been. I think his total this year is 5 2/3 innings pitched. Um, I've always been a very big Chris Sale fan. I think that there's so much. He's so nasty from the left side of the plate, and if I'm him, I'm probably not gonna be riding my bike around, especially with like my history in terms of injuries. It's so unfortunate. It's Red Sox fans, give them something to feel good about this year, because this year has really been a tragedy. I thought this team was going to be much more competitive than they've been. So when you see stuff like this happen to Chris Sale, you're just like, kick a man while he's down, kick a team while he's down already, because this is it's unfortunate. So I'm wishing him a speedy recovery, but at the same time, I think we could be a little bit more aware of what we're doing at times. But hopefully he's able to come back next year stronger. But I think the Red Sox have a little bit of reevaluating to do in terms of what they want to do with him and how they're going to play next year. But I know there's a lot that goes into that in terms of contracts and all kinds of agreements. So I think they should keep that in mind, because I'm curious to see how they approach this entire team going next year. And this plays a very large part in it. So, very curious to see how the Red Sox decide to move.
Yeah, and I mean, it really kind of defines their season. It just didn't go the way they wanted it to go and the way they thought it would go. But it's just classic Red Sox, though, right? Am I right? I mean, it's like they'll be out of it this year, and somehow they'll find themselves in the World Series next year. So it's just
Exactly
what they've done in the 21st century, and stuff like this is going to continue to happen, unfortunately. But I think they'll find a way through it, and even if it's not this year, I think they'll be, they have a great front office. They'll get it done there. All right, so that'll end it for the segment for Around the League. Now we're going to move on to the interview portion of the podcast, where we talk with Robert Flores from MLB Network. Here we go. All right, welcome to the interview portion of the At Bat Baseball podcast. You can see our next guest on MLB Network, where you can see him on shows like MLB Central. And I, as well as Miles, I'm sure saw him on SportsCenter growing up. It's Robert Flores. Thanks for coming on, man. It means a lot.
Saul, Miles, how you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
No, yeah, really good, really good. And like I said
awesome.
Before we came on, man, like this is the infancy. We're like, this podcast is super young, so this is our 19th episode. So it's really cool. Good. We could have you on for sure. Like any type of guest is a plus, but having someone like yourself is pretty.
Thanks. Good luck. Awesome. Good luck with the podcast. Congratulations.
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we'll get right into it, man. So obviously we're a podcast located in Chicago. We kind of want your take on the Sox and the Cubs. I mean, it's been a lot of drama, a lot of stuff going on with these two teams,
right.
Whether it be the losing team in the Cubs or just a team that's been inconsistent all year with the White Sox. So obviously the Sox will have a chance to make it to October, but kind of what's your take on Chicago baseball as it stands?
Well, it's interesting. I still don't understand why the Cubs are in this position when you consider the resources that they have at their disposal, the amount of revenue that is generated, the talent that was once there in that franchise. I just don't understand it. I still don't understand. Obviously there was a tremendous core group of players that left. I don't. Yeah, I would love to know the inner workings of how that all went down, because I don't understand how you can't maybe at least to keep found a way to keep one of them. With that being said, maybe Wilson Contreras is the guy that they get an extension to. That seems to me a player worthy to build around. But they still have a long way to go. Their system probably isn't where they would like it to be. So this, I think they're not quite out of the woods yet. As for the White Sox, that's another strange one. I don't know, and I don't think anyone except in that clubhouse knows for sure why the season has been going the way it has. I think injuries have played a large part, certainly, but there's something missing there, and I think it's just speculation for anyone outside the clubhouse to give their opinion. We don't really know for sure, and maybe the players within the clubhouse don't really know for sure. Sometimes it just doesn't work out, but there's still time. There's still a lot of talent in that room, and maybe they find a way to catch fire.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Obviously we figured out that Tim Anderson recently has gone down for 4 to 6 weeks. And do you feel that maybe there could have been some sort of move or some sort of more impactful move that they could have made at the deadline? Or do you think they were, pretty complacent and comfortable with what they have right now, especially considering the, success they had last year, the
Yeah.
postseason run that they made?
I think it was probably, I wonder if it was a sense of, look, if we could just play like ourselves and play up to our capabilities, that's almost like adding some de facto pieces at the deadline. I think they have more than enough to win that division. Now, do I think that they can win the World Series? Do I think that they can come out of the American League and win the pennant? I don't. I would still slot them behind the Astros and the Yankees, who I think are the class of the American League. Now, we've seen numerous times. I mean, take, for instance, what happened last year in Atlanta. It was around this time, maybe a little bit earlier, that the Braves caught fire and went all the way to the World Series and couldn't be stopped. Maybe the Chicago White Sox have that kind of run in them. I don't know. The talent would suggest that that possibility is there. But look, they've got to get out of their division first.
Yeah, and kind of as you said before, it doesn't really make sense. It doesn't make sense to us that we're Cubs fans, right? The fact that how they have handled
Yeah.
this whole situation. As you said, obviously Wilson might be that guy that they extend, or whether it be him or Hap or whatever it may be. A lot of the rumors are they're going to go for a big shortstop in the offseason. Does that make sense to you, or do you think that they're still that they should wait another year? As you said, again, the prospects are not where they would want them to be at the
Yeah.
moment. Is it something that you think they should wait another year for, or hey, maybe they catch fire somehow?
I they don't, as presently constructed, that, I mean, that ain't it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just not.
Yeah.
But look, the Cubs, I think, are in the unique spot where, because they have a lot of resources, they have money to spend, they have the ability to be aggressive. So I think they can kind of do two things at one time. They can be aggressive in the free agent market while at the same time trying to improve their farm system. So yeah, going after a shortstop probably wouldn't be the worst idea in the world. Try to fortify that anything in the pitching, starting rotation, bullpen, anything. So I think that this should not be a prolonged rebuild. I mean, first of all, I can't even believe I'm saying that with the Cubs, considering, the current circumstances that they find themselves in. A tremendous fan base, a uh, a stadium and neighborhood that is constantly filled. So they have a lot going for them where they should not be in this position for very long.
Yeah, I grew up a block away from Wrigley, and so the Cubs are my heart and soul. And so I think it's interesting that you say that. Are there any pieces that you look at right now on that Cubs roster? Maybe Nico Horner, maybe Ian Happ, Christopher Morel. Are there any of those guys that you think can be like really key cornerstones in like
Yeah.
developing this team?
I think one of the guys you just mentioned, I like Christopher Morel. I like the energy he brings. He puts the ball in play. He's just got something about him. And I don't know how good he's going to be. Is he going to be a superstar in the game? I don't know. But I think he can be an important part, an important piece of a winning team moving forward. just to see the way his teammates respond to him. And he's a really good player. So I like Christopher Morel. I like I said, I really like Wilson Contreras also. So there's some good things there. They just need to find more of them moving forward.
Yeah, and the thing is, like they have a lot of young pieces that they could add big free agents to, but it's just still a puzzling situation, and hopefully they can figure out sooner rather than later, and hopefully the White Sox are able to make a run because that's I think it would be great for the city in general having a team like that, and especially hey maybe Tim Anderson getting injured is a little bit of like an inspiration. They'll be able to make a run like that. Robert, besides being a great TV show host, you're also one of the biggest Houston Astros fans,
Yeah.
which I will say I appreciate how much you show your passion for them because I feel like growing up, like you see a lot of broadcasters, it's almost like taboo to talk about your team. It's like, oh wait, the
Yeah.
guy you're not supposed to talk about the team that you like, whatever. So I do appreciate that. So how do you evaluate their season? They're obviously one of the best teams, if not the best team in baseball.
Right.
How do you evaluate the season, especially after their trade deadline moves, like for guys like Mancini and Vasquez?
Yeah, I think that they really improved. I would have preferred if they had gotten Josh Bell just
Mhm.
to help balance out that lineup a little bit. You can be a little bit right-handed heavy, but look, Trey Mancini is a pro's pro. He's obviously one of the most respected dudes in all of Major League Baseball. Yeah, I also like them getting a left-hander. Look, Will Smith has struggled at times this
Mhm.
season. But the Astros saw up close and personal just how good he can be when he's right. I mean, he was a part of that bullpen that won the World Series that beat the Astros last year. Look, I think it's fair to say it's either the Yankees or the Astros coming out of the American League. As far as who wins it all, look, it's a group of teams for me: the Dodgers, the Mets, the Braves, the Astros, the Yankees. So that's five right there. Where do the Padres fit in there? I mean, the Padres, first of all, they got to figure out how to beat the Dodgers. I mean, you just can't just keep getting thumped by the Dodgers over and over and over
Mhm.
again. We saw that last weekend. The Juan Soto acquisition is seismic. The return of Fernando Tatis should help, but what's he going to look like? We don't know. So you're throwing him basically right into the middle of a pennant race, and he's just basically finishing spring training. So that's going to be interesting. So, for me, it's that group of six teams, and just throw them up in the air, and depending on which day. It's just going to depend on who's going to ultimately hoist that trophy at the end. It's just all about, like it always is, who gets hot, who's going to make plays, who's going to make the right pitches with men on base late in the game. That's what it always comes down to, and that's what it's going to come down to this fall.
You know what? I think that's a great point. So I really want to know, kind of going back to the Yankees coming off of a very incredible weekend of baseball against the Cardinals. The Cardinals pretty much taking care of business at home, which I thought was incredible. Now,
Mm-hmm.
coming off of that series, along with the addition of Jordan Montgomery and Jose Quintana, do you
Yeah.
think that the Cardinals are a team to also kind of keep an eye out for? Because offensively, I've always said that the Cardinals are incredible. They should be one of the best teams in the MLB. Do you think that this is a team that can kind of come out of the woodworks right now?
I mean, they could be. They would be a dark horse National League pennant contender for me. I still have them a little bit below that group of, like I said, Dodgers, Mets, Braves, Padres, and then I would have the Cardinals right below them. But look, sweeping the Yankees, that's no easy feat. I was surprised by the Jordan Montgomery move. They certainly could have been, and I think they were in on the Juan Soto conversations. They certainly have a lot of talent, both at the major league and minor league level, where they could have enticed Mike Rizzo to make that deal, but that didn't happen. That being said, you got two MVP candidates in the corners in Arenado and Goldschmidt. You got a future Hall of Famer in Yadier Molina. And boy, it would really help them if um, if Jack Flaherty was right. That would really, really help them. But with that being said, like I said, I don't know. I mean, right now the Dodgers are playing like they're the best team in all of baseball.
Mhm.
So maybe it doesn't matter. But look, not every team is perfect. Clayton Kershaw's out, but they're getting Dustin May back. Walker Bueller's going to come back. So this is definitely a formidable team in the Los Angeles Dodgers, where the NL pennant might be going through LA again.
Yeah, that makes some great points there. I mean, Robert, we'll leave you with one last question. Now, I think a lot of people are talking about this with the MVP race, the AL MVP race. Now, I wanted to get your take on who you think is going to be the MVP in the AL. Is it as easy to say it's going to be Ohtani or Judge, or are we missing out, or who do you think is going to win the MVP this year?
Yeah, I think it's Aaron Judge at this
Yeah.
point. Ohtani, look, you could make the case. I mean, moving forward, you could give it to him every year if he's going to do like this. I mean, I think we had the comparison that he's hitting like Matt Olson and he's pitching like Frankie Montas. Not the Frankie Montas we saw on Sunday, but the one that was pitching in Oakland. So he certainly has a strong case. Jordan Alvarez has had a tremendous season, but for me, it's still Aaron Judge.
No, yeah, and Astros did a great job of retaining Jordan Alvarez. I mean, that contract, I feel like it feels like a steal with how good that guy is and his age and all that. So, yeah. So, Robert, thanks for coming on, man. Like I said, really appreciate you. Didn't have to do this. Really appreciate you coming on, especially you're under the weather. You let us know, and appreciate you, pushing through. And we'd like to have you on some other time, man. I really, really appreciate it.
You got it. Thanks for having me, and good luck with the podcast. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, man. All right, thank you.
You got it.